Jackie the Jokeman Martling.
There he is.
Now, you didn't mention the big penis thing.
No, is that in your resume?
No, that's what we have in common. I'll say it about you. I'll say it about you, and you say it about me, and then we're a team.
One big penis.
One big penis.
So, Jack, how you doing, brother?
It's good to see you. It is good to see you. Like every time somebody says, "How you doing?" You know what you say? I'm doing great.
Right.
Nobody wants to hear. You really want to know?
Nobody gives a shit.
I'm not doing great. I don't got a lot of gigs. My knees hurt. I'm too fat.
Just the fact
I can't sing. I can't hear. But how am I doing? I'm great, Artie.
Yeah. But you know me. I can't complain.
No. Why would you?
But listen, it's always fun to see you and have you on the show here. What's your life looking like? I know you did this documentary about your life, which I'm in, by the way.
And you are great in it. And we're actually having a screening on Wednesday, for a family and friends and cast. I don't know if cast is the right word, but a very small screening here on Long Island. We're really, we're psyched to see it on the big screen, or how big. I don't know how big the screen is.
Yeah, it looks good.
Nowadays, people's TVs are bigger than most of the
I know.
movies.
You see a kid watching Jaws for the first time on a tiny phone.
Yeah, but that's the most exciting thing I got going. Thanks to Tommy, I worked out in Las Vegas a couple of weeks ago, and that was just really big fun. And do you know Lenny Clark?
Sure.
Well, I went up and worked with Lenny Clark, for a weekend with Lenny and Christine. And so, once in a while I have a great gig and really enjoy myself. The pandemic really sucked.
Oh, yeah.
And, I do all these jokes, and I'm wondering whether I'm going to go up there and draw a blank. But I went up, and it was like I had been up there the night before, if I guess if you tell the same stupid jokes every night for 40 years, you're not going to forget them.
Wait, was you opening for Lenny Clark?
Lenny hosted.
Right.
And then Christine went, then I went, and then Christine went, but Lenny was doing his stuff. So it was a 3-headliner show. It wasn't an open middle feature or anything like that. Yeah.
Well, that's a hell of a show.
Hey, oh yeah, and we all stand there and watch each other because we're all big fans of each other, which is it's very flattering. When Lenny Clark stands there and watches you and laughs, he's been around.
Yeah, I love Lenny, but that's it. You can't help it with you because there's the off chance you're going to hear a joke you haven't heard before.
You never know. You can't trust me.
Do you have a favorite joke of all time? I don't think I ever heard you talk about this.
You know what? I always tell people that my favorite joke is the one I've been telling recently that gets a big laugh, because it's like if your favorite meal is steak. If I had steak last night and you said, "What's your favorite meal?" I'm not going to say steak.
Right.
But there are some jokes that I just, really love, and they're usually the really stupid ones. But probably the one that I get the biggest giggle out of, because I'm sure there are a lot of things you do in your act that are litmus tests.
Yeah, sure.
It's like if they laugh at this, I like this audience. And I understand if they don't. It's not up to me what they think is funny. But the joke where the guy says he goes in the bar and there's a beautiful blonde barmaid, and a sign behind her says cheese sandwich $5, chicken sandwich $7, hand job $50, and he says, "Are you the one that gives the hand jobs?" And she says, "Yep." He says, "Wash your hands and get me a cheese sandwich." And I always say to the audience, if you don't think that's funny, I do not care about you.
Well, that's it's like I mentioned in the documentary, I hadn't seen you in a while, and we both did a gig at Gotham for a TV spot on Mark Cuban's network. And but Jackie walks up there. Again, it's just like watching Babe Ruth calmly walk from the on-deck circle over to the home plate, and Jackie just leans into the mic and says, "2 flies land on a piece of shit."
That's so flattering. The way you describe it in the documentary, it's so flattering. I owe you a hand job.
Well, listen, I'll take that now.
If I could, I'll give you a reach over wherever you. Where are you? I don't even know where you are. I assume you're in Jersey?
I'm in Jersey, yeah, at a great studio named Bravery Studios here in Garfield, New Jersey.
Oh,
So it's nothing but Hollywood for me.
That's what I hear. You know, when it said Bravery Studios, I thought maybe you set up a microphone in your house and they'll call it Bravery because you're finally sticking your nose out the door. And I'm thrilled for you, you know.
Thanks a lot.
I don't know if you know, every once in a while I send you a text and I never know if you get them or not, but I just, you know, I'm trying to be supportive, you know. But
no,
like,
I know.
this guy again, you know.
No, absolutely not. No, I appreciate them. Every time I see one, I'm like, oh, maybe I'll even answer that one.
Yeah, but, you know, but that's, in fact, one time you did, and I said, oh, somebody must have stole Artie's phone.
Who's this, Johnny the Joke Man?
There he is. You know, I actually played Johnny the Joker in a movie. I was one of those movies where they stole all the money. You know, I don't even want to go into it. It was one of those, you know, all the little New York, New Jersey mobsters make a movie and then they steal the money and disappear. But I was Jackie the Joker.
Well, you were right up there with what's his face who died, who played the Joker.
Frank?
No,
Not Frank.
No. Who played the Joker? And Heath Ledger. Yeah, Heath Ledger.
Oh.
You played the Joker, kind of like that, I guess, right?
Yeah, you know, I'm not doing myself in. I got too many people I need to annoy. You know.
Well, what do you got going at home now? Is that still? I see you're in some sort of office. That's your garage.
There was a garage here when I moved. I got this beautiful home. I wish you'd come visit me someday. Beautiful home on the water on Long Island Sound. I'm still swimming. I swam this morning at 7:00. It's a little chilly, but you know, it's still beautiful. I got a great girlfriend, and this garage was an actual garage, but I completely changed it around and put pine on the walls. And it's funny because I got divorced, so I moved in here and we put up cleaned out the garage and put up pine walls. And then the guy built shelves, and I brought over a bunch of my crap from Nancy's house. And then he put up more shelves, and I brought over some more crap. It was a slowly. But now all my crap is here. And it's all stuff that's no good to anybody. You know, 3/4 inch videos and 1/2 inch videos and super VHS and, 14,000, if you could see them, like all these goddamn loose leaves, all full of the same joke.
God.
You know?
Wow.
But I got all this crap, and I got so much Stern memorabilia, but, I don't know if anybody's interested in it, but,
I'm sure they are. You basically are a hoarder. I mean, is that...
You know, that isn't true because everything I have, it's not like I saved yesterday's newspaper.
Right.
But it's all stuff that came into play at some point. But after 40 years, there's a lot of stuff, No,
I'm saying...
Like I could point at anything and I could do 20 minutes. If I point my finger, I can do 20 minutes. That's me with Keith Richards and Les Paul. And that's a cell from... the Flintstones, and that's all the jokes I wrote for Rodney, and that's a Don Martin original from Mad Magazine. You
have all the jokes. You have all the one-liners you ever did for Howard. You kept.
They are in my mother's attic, and they are absolutely worthless because they're all
out of context.
They're in the flow of if you just say to get to the other side. There's not a lot of joke there.
No, I was always going to say, but you kept every one of them, though. I mean, there's something abnormal about that. I think it's great.
Well, I think way back early, I said, you know what? There's not going to be any proof that I ever did anything. So I just saved them, but they're fun, and it's like a time capsule. At some point, I told somebody, they asked me, hey, a long time ago, who's the guy that played David... from the famous show business family, David
Carradine.
Carradine.
Yeah.
He was on the show, and Howard said such and such. And I'm sure you wrote it. And I said, well, do you know the date of the show? And he wrote me back. And he said, August 4th, 1994 or something. I went up and I found the note.
You found it. Wow.
And I said, yeah, that was my... if somebody had the date of a show, like if you said, all right, August 4th, 1997.
Right.
I have a cassette of that. I could find the notes from that day, and you could sit there with the notes. And as the show played, as it got to each line, you could see what lines, for some reason I find that interesting, but he could also go, he'd go 10 minutes without me writing anything.
What was the most you ever wrote? Like, would you say sheer just jokes?
Maybe an inch and a half. Like sometimes it'd be a thin. I'll tell you one thing. This is great.
You got to keep it brief.
It was sometimes it was a word or a sentence. Or,
exactly, yeah.
But I bought a computer finally. And when I bought the computer, when you buy a computer, sometimes what's it called? When it's the stuff already in the computer, it's bundled.
Right.
And I had never done audio editing on a computer before. And this thing called SoundForge was in my computer. And the manual was in the computer. And I printed out the entire manual and brought it with me to the Stern Show. In high school, when you do your homework in class, so you go out and get drunk that night, right? So I'm sitting there and I'm studying this manual while we're on the air. And for the 3 months it took me to learn SoundForge, I wonder how much funnier he would have been if I had been paying attention. I was writing jokes with one eye and I was reading just enough that I could go home and apply it. It's just so funny.
How often when you did the Stern Show would you find yourself doing something back there that had nothing to do with the show?
You mean like that? No, that was an anomaly. That very, very rarely.
You always right on.
Because I was always really enjoying myself, and I wasn't just. I had to read what Fred wrote. So many times Fred handed me something and I had already written it, which was just amazing. I mean, we literally were sharing a brain,
right?
And then when I got, when I finally had up to my ears, is they stuck Benji next to me, and we were already such a finely tuned machine. It was me and Fred and Robin and Howard, and Fred's doing the sound effects and I'm writing jokes. And once in a while he hands me a note from Pluto and I'm laughing at the jokes. We didn't need anything else. It's like we didn't need another shortstop, And all of a sudden Benji's there. So he's sitting in my space and crowding me. And so I got to read Fred's notes and Benji's notes and my notes and get them up in time for Howard. It was just unnecessary. And nothing against Benji, because pushing and clawing, that's how I got where I got. I'm sure that's how you got where you got.
You got to take that offer if it comes. Absolutely.
You got to push, How about me, coach? Put me in, coach.
Yeah.
Lou Gehrig said, put me in, coach. He's there for 2,000 games,
And I think the biggest analogy I can think of when it comes to Benji is Lou Gehrig.
What do you mean, luckiest man on the face of the earth?
Luckiest man on the face of the earth. No, I didn't realize that Benji came in while you were still there. I didn't know that. That is a little odd.
What happened was Gary told me, hey, Zach, Benji's going to start sitting indoor in the news. And he came in and sat indoor in the news. And I think slowly but surely he came in earlier and earlier. And, it's not my show. I can't tell Howard what to do and what not to do. Now, I don't know if it's Benji's idea. I don't know if it's Don Buchwald's idea to put Benji there because it's his client and push me out, or to say, Jackie, we got this covered if you ever quit. I'm like, Bafangul. It was low rent.
It's a head game.
Oh, it's crazy. But all things considered, it was the greatest, greatest crap in the world. Was
there one guy on the show you like fucking with the most? Like you just did Gary's voice?
You know what? It's not fair, but of course, Gary, because he was an easy target. He wrote me an email. Stop me if I've done. I know we've talked 2 or 3 or 4 times on your podcast, but he sent me an email for something about the show, and he spelled the word make. AMKE, which happens all the time. You accidentally switch letters if you're going fast. So instead of make, it said AMKE. And I never let that go and then he'd be in trying to talk to Howard. And Gary, not AMKE in any sense, and like he'd get so incensed and said, we're off the air. Nobody's hearing this. This is not entertaining anybody. I said, it's entertaining me. Look at Fred. Fred's peeing his pants, you know. The concept of breaking his chops when there's nobody listening except for me and Gary. Did I tell you this? When the last day that they were on terrestrial radio, the last week, I guess they were having all old people in, and Gary called up to say, "You want to come on the show?" You know, everybody. I was like, "Gary, I don't want to go in there and get my balls broke. Really, you know, it's been years and years." He said, "No, it'll be nice. You know, be nice." So it was the day before the last day. I guess he had a big rally out. In the park.
I was there.
Right, so I wasn't there, but they had me in for the second to last day of terrestrial radio.
Right.
Instead of sitting in the seat where I guess you must have been sitting.
I was sitting in the seat,
I sat where a guest would sit. And I came in and sat down. And I got to tell you, it was the most enjoyable hour or two I ever spent. Everybody, you guys were all so nice, and it was so warm, and it was such a great revisit. And Tom came in and admitted that he never returned my phone calls. You know, it was like a cleansing kind of, but we're sitting there.
A closure.
And I'm looking right at Howard, and next to me is a chair. And Gary came in and sat down. And I would love to hear the audio of this. Because it's not what anybody said, but Howard caught me looking at Gary's mouth.
Yeah.
He caught me like almost like looking up a girl's skirt. We're sitting there and I'm looking over and I have the big smile and I turn back and Howard's eyes are locked at me. He says, "You can't get enough of him, can you?" I said, "That is entertainment." I said, "I would never say." And we laughed so hard at nothing. But he's sitting there. I said, "Look at those. His poor lips are just fighting to get over those teeth." You know?
But it's funny you say, like, you know, that no one, everyone was real nice to you and everything. I mean, people would ask me all the time, how come when they bring up Jackie's name, do you not talk? I would always dummy up. I said out of respect for Jackie, you know. I'm sitting in this chair because of him. It's a job that he invented, literally. And I'm sitting here and I'm not gonna bash the guy because it's not my place to. I mean, everybody else was doing it.
Yeah, you know, the stuff I hear, you know, I never listen, but
yeah,
you know, to hear them tell it, you know, and people, I'll say something nice, like somebody will tweet something, and I don't respond much, but I'll say something, and somebody will tweet back like, "Well, then why are you always bashing Howard? Why are you always?" And I have never, ever bashed them.
I don't recall.
The worst I've ever done is tell the truth.
Right.
Which is certainly not bashing anybody, but, you know, one man's ceiling is another man's floor. But it was crazy. But there's so many people, they got such a wrong impression of me. And, I'm still fighting that. You know, like when I met Ian at the Friars Club, I had been off the show for, I don't know, a couple months.
Ian, your guest host.
Ian Carr, the guy who did the documentary.
Right.
And I met him at a Friars, Meet Your Fellow Friars night. And he's a huge fan, huge Stern fan. And we start talking. And I swear to God, Artie, I'm not exactly, after 5 minutes, you can ask him. He goes, "Jesus Christ." He says, "You're not that guy on the show. You couldn't be further from the guy on the show." I said, "I know that." Yeah. He says, "Well, you know," and I said, "I don't fight that. That's the show." You know, Bozo leaves the studio and he takes off his big shoes and his wig. You know, I don't. If it works, they can break my balls all they want.
You say it before. You said it before, and you say it again. That the Stern Show is just if the ball breaking is happening to someone else, it's the funniest thing in the world. But if it's happening to you, it's the worst.
And I used to get them, they'd all be on me at once. You know, I tell people I was like Bruce Lee.
Right.
You know, who's standing in the middle with his karate arms up and the five guys coming out of him with steel rods and metal chains, and he's,
Yeah.
But then you just try and deflect. Like, everybody's coming at me and rip me a shook and I'll go, "Oh, look at Gary's ass," and boom. And we're out.
You gotta be major at deflecting, and Gary was an easy guy to deflect to. He was.
God, it was just crazy, but it was just so fun, you know.
To hear you reminisce about it shows that you're not the guy that a lot of times you're talking about, because you could tell how much fun you had doing it, and how and I did too, man. Again, we're only two people who could share that they had that job, and
shared the ups and the downs and the rounds and everything. But you know, me doing good and being happy doesn't play well. You know,
right.
You know, that's not good copy. You know, so who cares? You know, it's people. Everything dies. You know, the world still, not the Stern world, still thinks I'm cheap. They, you know, people, they still think, you know, they cut out the part where after Howard wrote me about this whole hotel thing. At the end, when he's finally done, I said, all right, now I hate to bust your bubble, but I paid for that hotel room. Of course, they edited that out. So every 5 minutes you get an email, Jackie, pay for your Cardozo room. You know, Jackie, pay Rodney back. You know, all the things that never existed. Hey, Jackie, you want a Heineken? You know, I haven't had a drink in 20 years. You know, do some homework.
Describe the Rodney thing. What exactly was that? Where they say you owed him joke money, or you paid him in jokes or something like that?
It all hinged on Rodney disavowing the concept of paying for jokes.
Right.
And if you throw a stone, you're going to hit 5 comedians in New York City that sold Rodney a joke for $50.
Right.
That was the going rate. It always was. He bought so many, but so did all the comics. It was nothing new. And when I was with him, I needed to reprint my first album. I had no money. You know, this was after we'd gone away and blah, blah, blah. I said, listen, I really love to borrow $1,000. I got to reprint my album. He said, yeah, no problem. So he sent me a check for $1,000. And we kind of lost contact.
Wow,
and
nice guy.
I had less than any money. And he told me that the 2-bagger joke alone was worth hundreds of thousands of dollars to him. You know, he said, you know, my favorite joke ever. I could never get mad, you know. So he said that years later. But so I didn't have any money. So it's not like I could sit and write him a check to, you know, he's not sitting there waiting for my $1,000. And then slowly but surely, I see him on Carson or here and there, and he does a joke that I sent that he never acknowledged or never paid for, which who cares? And you got to know Rodney to know that he's not sitting there with a pencil and paper and keeping track of what joke is whose and stuff like that.
Right.
But it got to a point where it'd been a bunch of them, like 6 or 8 of them, and I don't. It's hard to explain, but I didn't really care. But I just wanted to know, you know, because I owed him $1,000. And after the show, I went to Dangerfields. I went down to the dressing room and watched him in his blue bathrobe with his junk hanging out. And I said, Rodney, you know, there's a bunch of jokes I sent you that you didn't acknowledge and that you've been using. He said, there's no problem. There's no problem. And it was his concept. He said, what was it? He says, well, you owe me $1,000, right? I said, yeah. He said, all right, figure. Let's say I used 10 jokes already. Okay, so that's $500. So you owe me 10 more jokes, you know, which is 10 times $50 joke. I said, all right, that sounds fine. And he set the concept, and but it was simple math. It didn't mean anything.
Right.
So then what happened was we weren't really in contact, and I was really on the balls of my ass, living in my mother's attic. And I had a second album ready to go, and I had no money. And you know me, I'm ballsy. If you don't scratch and claw, that's why I can't get mad at Benji. You know, I'm scratching and clawing for 20 years.
Right.
I wrote to Rodney and said, listen, I know I owe you 10 jokes, but I really need some money to put out my next album. I'd like to borrow $2,000 more. But I never heard from him.
Right.
I never heard back from him, right? So when he was on the Stern Show, after he was on, he went to leave, and I guess Ganji said to him, Rodney, what's this about? Jackie owes you money or blah, blah, blah. And he came back in, but he's playing a little. And he said, yeah, I lent him $1,000, you know, and he never paid me. I said, Rodney, you know, you used 10 jokes and you said, all right, you owe me 10 more jokes. You know, I owe you 10 jokes. And he actually said, I don't know anything about paying me in jokes. which was the whole linchpin
right.
to the whole thing, which was he was just outright lying. It was, but what I'm not going to say to this icon that I love so much, that I loved long before I was a comedian. You were so coked up and so drunk and so stoned, you probably have no idea what the hell went on in 1980. So I'm not going to go there. And then I don't know how it came, whether he said, yeah, and then he asked for a couple grand more, And I said, yeah, but you never acknowledged it. And of course, by the end of the day, Howard had me owing him $3,000.
Right.
So to this day, I get email, pay Rodney back. It's like, it's subsided. And he was fooling around. I think his office actually called and said, do you want to keep the feud going at the Beacon tonight? I was like, I'm not going to walk into not that he'd give me a hard time, but the Stern audience and Howard, I'm like, sometimes you know better than to elongate something,
Yeah, right. Well,
you're not giving a piece of meat to Rodney, you're giving a piece of meat to Howard. You know what I mean? So, but so the bottom line is I theoretically owed him 10 more jokes or $500, which is such a pittance. And he knew it. And of course, Howard did too. But the concept of I owed him $2,000 that he never even acknowledged that I asked for was so ludicrous.
Right. How did that end up? It just ended up like that?
Yeah, with no communication or anything. And then, a couple of years later, I ran into him and, I never saw him again after the Stern Show thing, because that was late. That was like late 90s, I think, and he was in pretty bad shape, I think. It was like
early to mid 90s, I think. I remember hearing the whole thing.
Yeah, but see, I'd have to listen to it, and because they could very simply snip out a few, a
key
thing here
pieces
and
of information. Yeah.
Yeah, that like hey, but it was funny. It was really good radio.
No, it was good
funny.
radio.
I was the butt of the joke, but it wasn't true,
Right.
And he's been dead for 20 years, and people are saying pay him back. And like, I'm not going to, I addressed it in my book. I explained the whole thing in my book, but I'm sure people read it like it's fiction.
Yeah. So
you know what I do a lot? I do Cameo. Do you know?
I have done it before. I got to get back on there. Cameo is great.
I do a bunch of them because it's Artie. It's made for me. My aunt is overweight and she's Italian and she loves Polish jokes, or she loves poop jokes, or my uncle is a cheap bastard and it's his 48th birthday. And they tell me these things and I can just go down the checklist off the top of my head and do 3 minutes of jokes. I got like 125-star reviews on that thing,
Yeah.
And the most important thing is not the money from the Cameo, but during the pandemic, it was my methadone. It was like, we need to get up on stage. We need to tell jokes. We need to get some laughs. And I'd sit there and do 3 minutes of jokes and laugh at myself into the thing. That was like, that would perk me up. Like Barb would say, wow, I guess you did a few cameos today. You're a little perky.
Yeah, I felt the same way.
And then you get a nice review. It's fun.
I felt the same way doing it. Absolutely. It's perfect. And it is perfect for you. Well, Jack, let me tell you something, man. I love you.
And I love you. And I can't believe that I am so thrilled that you were in the documentary. I just can't. I'm still friends with everybody I ever met in my life, except for Howard and Robin and Gary and Fred. And I'm not saying I'm not friends with Gary and Fred. It's just like none of them are in the documentary. None of them.
Right.
Because they told the company line, and it's like, which is so sad and it's so hard to explain to people. Like, how could they not be in your documentary? I'm like, sit down. I'll tell you a story.
Yeah, no, it's hard to acknowledge. But those are people that are forever connected to you professionally, that you would totally expect to see one of them in a Jackie the Joke Man fucking documentary.
Right, and I tell stories about the show, and I'll talk about it on a podcast, and people are like, Jesus Christ, that's old history. It's like, no, it's a chunk of my life. What am I, stop talking about my college days? You know what I mean?
Right.
It was an important 18 years out of my life. You know, they belong to me as much as they belong to anybody, you know.
Yeah. Well, what do you got coming up? What's in the plug machine?
I'm doing the Palm Beach Kennel Club, which I guess is a pretty good venue, believe it or not, on December 16th, which is a little close to Christmas, but I don't care. I'm thrilled to do that. I was supposed to do a roast tonight, but, 2 days in advance, they said that we can't do it. We got a COVID scare. So that whole thing, everything is on such tenterhooks, like anything can be canceled at any minute. I'm doing Uncle Vinny's Algonquin Arts Theater in March, and I'm doing the Laugh. All the places are the same, Artie.
Right.
Laugh It Up, laugh your ass off, laugh your balls off, down in Fort Myers in the beginning of January. And I'm doing, these guys have a show at the Raz Room in New Hope that I guess is in March. And they also have a Raz Room at the Meisner Theater in Boca, which is a great room.
Jesus.
But that got moved. It got moved 3 times. I used to do it every January. Then I went January to April, and then April to October, and then October. And now it's not till next April. Things keep getting bumped. But I'm hoping that people like the documentary.
Yeah, I think they will.
We're going to get to take it around and maybe show it at a comedy club and combine it with a little bit of stand up. And I want to do the Q&A because people, I'm sure as well as people are still so enamored with the Stern Show. They have so many questions. Even the people that don't like me have questions.
Right, exactly.
So I want to stand up there and answer their questions and straighten them out. Somebody says, why didn't you pay back Rodney the money you owe him? I'll say, all right, sit down. I'll give you the 10-minute story. I look forward to that,
Yeah. Well, I look forward to seeing you all the time, buddy. And thanks for doing this.
I will do this anytime you want. I am always ready. And it's that simple.
Okay. Thanks, Jack. I appreciate it.
Oh, let me give you the address for Cameos, cameo.com/Jackie Martling. And I only charge $50, and also I don't know, I've been tweeting jokes for, I think 15 years. Every day at 4:20 there's a filthy joke. And so many of them, Artie, people like, how can you say that? I just don't care. A Jewish joke, a Polish joke, an Italian joke, a fat joke, it's comedy, loosen up, that's a whole nother discun.
Who would have thought that fat jokes would become controversial?
Oh my God. Oh, they're changing the name of the gypsy moth. And that's not a joke. It's gotten to the point where everything in the paper reads like an Onion article.
Right.
Like it's not believable. Next thing you know, they're going to change the name of the gypsy moth. Well, they really are. Holy Christ.
Right. All right, Jack. I'll see you around, brother.
All right. Call me anytime. I'm up for anything. Thanks, Tommy. And I appreciate you guys.